This is the Sony Cyber-Shot T7. This camera came out in 2005. It's got a low megapixel CCD sensor that by today's standards would not be considered very capable at all. But it's quickly become one of my favorite cameras. So in 2023, what makes this camera special? Let me tell you about it. Alright friends, so today I'm going to be talking to you about this camera here. This is the Sony Cyber-Shot T7. It was released in 2005. It's a 5 megapixel camera, ultra compact, obviously, as you can see. And I'm going to be going through a review / discussion about it today with you because this has quickly turned into one of my favorite cameras, even amongst my brand new cameras. Well, not brand new, but really new camera that I'm filming on right now. I still love having this thing with me. So I'm going to go through it in 5 different sections and kind of give you my thoughts on all of those and give it sort of a rating system. I've got notes, I'm prepared, don't judge me, and let's go from there. So just some opening thoughts on the camera itself here. As I go through the categories for the ratings, I'm going to get a little more detailed on those subjects, but right off the bat, let's just talk about probably the biggest pros and cons, okay? So the biggest pro, in my opinion, is the size. This thing is tiny. It's literally smaller than the smallest of cell phones these days. It slides right in your pocket, super duper easy. You can literally take it everywhere. There's like no excuses with this camera. And that's one of the biggest things that intrigued me about it when I saw it on social media with other people posting it in the palm of their hand. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So with that being said, the biggest con, it's a DIGICAM from 2005. It's low megapixels. The display on the back is not great, which actually kind of leads to some good surprises, but I'll get to that. And battery life is not great. The battery in this thing is tiny. You can get replacement batteries on Amazon. I think I bought 2 extra batteries for this and a charger for like $18-ish, maybe not even that much. I'd have to look it up exactly, but definitely not over 20 bucks. So the battery doesn't last long. This one actually came with one of the original batteries that still hangs in there pretty good, but I did buy extras because with it being such a small size, it goes fast. Low light performance is not going to be great. Again, this is a CCD sensor from 2005. Your ISO performance is not going to be good. So don't expect that right off the bat, okay? We have to kind of treat these things with respect to the limitations that they bring to the table, especially when we're being critical of them. I would never ever try to rank this against a modern day camera because it's just not appropriate. So right off the bat, battery life, not great, but you can get extras cheap. Low light performance, not there. But you have flash, okay? It's got a great flash on it actually, and a lot of people dig the flash aesthetic. So for that, really good. So you can still shoot indoors, low light, whatever, just plan on using the flash. It's even got a slow synchro flash, which you can get really fun and creative with. So I figured for the first topic of discussion, I'm just gonna jump straight into it. I'm gonna talk about image quality. I feel like no matter what all specs a camera brings to the table, people still wanna know, how does it look? So I gotta be honest with you, I gave this on my system a 7 out of 10. Now I'm leaving 10 for like something that has to blow me away, okay? So I still consider 7 really good in my opinion. I was really impressed. I totally was not expecting it. And I had kind of mentioned in the beginning that the back screen is not that great. I have to remember, it's almost a 20-year-old screen. So what your screen is showing you is not necessarily what the lens is seeing. So this is still a Sony Zeiss lens that's on there. I mean, granted, it's tiny, but it still should be quality glass. You know what I mean? So I was really impressed. In the sunshine, especially. A nice sunny day with maybe even a tiny bit of underexposure, because it does have some tunability in that regard. You can set exposure comp in this, which I thought was pretty cool, and rather simply as well. I would say that's where it's going to shine. If you can get on a sunny day with some good contrasty colors and things like that, you're going to have a ton of fun with this camera. I shot it indoors. I took it to a mall one day, which I'll show some photos of that, and I used the flash indoors, and I loved it. I thought they did really, really good. The focus is a little bit finicky, the autofocus, especially when you start getting into a lower light situation. But again, it's older, right? It doesn't have a very, very advanced system, but when it nails it, it's actually surprisingly sharp. This thing shoots in JPEG. It does not even have RAW capabilities. Okay, now that's good or bad depending on how you look at it, but some people don't even want to mess with RAW. They don't even want to mess with edits. It actually puts out pretty solid JPEGs. Now, I am inclined to tweak all of my images as much as I keep telling myself, dial in the settings, let the camera do its job. I just have fun editing, so I still edit my photos even a little bit no matter what. I'm not really forcing anything or pushing anything because a JPEG just doesn't have the data to be manipulated the way that a RAW file would. At a certain point, it starts to actually degrade the image and can look really, really bad. So I'm doing minor edits, but it actually took them really, really well. Size-wise, again, it's 5 megapixels, so you're not going to be doing any commercial printing with this camera, but it was never intended for that. This is a snapshot camera. This is a have with you, catch moments, have fun kind of camera. For that, I think it's perfect. Social media, even small prints, of course, like snapshot prints. If you have something like an Instax printer, it'd be a lot of fun for that. And you could even make 5x7s or 8x10s with it if you wanted to have, you got something that you really, really like. It's going to handle it just fine. 5 megapixels is fine for that, despite what kind of the modern culture of, if it's not at least 20, it's trash kind of thing. That's not true, okay? It just depends what you need it for. 7 out of 10 on image quality. Super solid, especially given my expectations. All right, category number 2 is going to be durability. If it takes fantastic images, but you're afraid to go use it, that's not necessarily a good thing. So now that's going to be kind of a rough area with DIGICAMs because just the nature of them, none of these were really designed to be professional cameras. So they don't have the same kind of body construction. There's typically a lot of plastic involved and things like that. So again, we have to treat it for what it is. Durability is going to be subjective, okay? But for this one, I gave this a 7 out of 10 again on durability. This thing, for a tiny little camera, it's a tank. It's made pretty much completely of metal, except for the actual screen here. I even think the little slider in front is a thin metal of something, which I totally wasn't expecting that. It's hefty. This thing actually has some weight, despite being literally about the size of a credit card. So I'm giving it 7 out of 10 on durability. When I got this, I noticed that it had a little dent in the side here. Of course, first thing I thought, like, oh great, well, that's why it's on the shelf. It took a big hit. It doesn't work, you know what I mean? But surprisingly, I put the battery in it after I charged it and it fired right up. So that shows me that this thing has probably already taken some abuse. I mean, it's got some miles on it for sure. And it's got a pretty gnarly dent on the side that I was like, it's for sure not gonna work, and it does. So I think that's another thing that adds to how good this camera is as just a walk around, have all the time piece. It's so slim, and I know that it's built well. It's gonna be fine in my pocket. If the slider gets broken off the front, because I've seen models that I've looked up where the slider was missing. Okay, so I didn't mention this yet, but here's one of the coolest things about it. This actually powers on the camera. Listen to this. What a nice little sound, right? Why don't cameras do that anymore? It's a nice little greeting you get. But this slides down. It protects the lens when you're not using it, and then when you're ready to go, it slides down, powers on the camera. Okay, what if you break that, or this falls, or something like that? It also has a power button on the side there. I'm pretty sure, I haven't tested it because I don't, if my camera's not broken, I'm not gonna break it for a test, but I'm pretty sure that even if that front slider came off, you would still have the ability to power your camera on and off with the use of that side button, which I don't know if that was intentional or a lucky mistake on Sony's part, but I would like to think it's probably intentional. But that's a great feature in my opinion, because whenever you have a power source attached to another mechanism, if that mechanism goes wrong, it's gone. I have the Fujifilm X10 and then X20. Those power on with the turning of the lens. Okay, there is no other power button or anything like that on that camera. So if that feature fails or breaks, my camera's a brick now, and that stinks because those are awesome cameras. So in this regard, you kind of have like an override if it does get broken. I think this thing could stay in your pocket all day long every day, and it's going to be fine. All right, next category is going to be ease of use. Something that me personally, I find very important when I'm looking at a camera purchase. It can take the most phenomenal images, but if I have to fumble through menus, or it's not intuitive, or it's more of a pain to get to actually shooting, as a consumer, I'm gonna lean towards the one that's easiest to use, because that gets me in the field, that gets me shooting quickly. It gives me confidence because I know I'm not gonna have to fumble through a bunch of things to get a shot. So now that's obviously gonna be subjective. Some people are highly inclined to menu systems and technology and things like that, and they could navigate any menu system and catch on very quickly. That's not how my brain works, so I need something to be fairly intuitive. I remember from the film days when we started having, the more advanced film SLRs, they did a ton of stuff, which was awesome, but sometimes it was tough to, fumble through the menus and then figure out what did what. And then same thing with early digital SLRs. This camera, on the other hand, is really, really easy. You go auto mode, you literally just slide open the thing, it's ready to shoot. It does have a program mode, which I thought was really, really cool. Program mode with a decent amount of adjustability. You can mess with the white balance, you can do your exposure comp. There's contrast, I think you can even change, color, how much saturation. So I was impressed at how much adjustability that had inside the program mode. So that's usually how I shoot it. I have it in program, and I have my settings dialed to kind of give the look that I prefer to shoot. And it's great, and it remembers your settings. So that's another really cool thing about an older digital camera. Sometimes the second you power them off, I have an Olympus like that. You power it off, you power it back on, you got to plug all that in again, and that's a bummer, especially when you're trying to conserve battery, so you don't want it on all the time. This remembers what you had set, so as long as you don't need to change anything, you pick it up and go. As far as the menu system goes within this, it's super simple to navigate. There's not a ton of functions. There is some things you can tweak, but it's not so much that you're going to get overwhelmed. It's got auto, it's got scene modes, it's got the program mode, which I like to use. It remembers the way you put things in. So for that ease of use, I give it 10 out of 10 because it's super, super easy. And again, if you want to, just have quick fire, slide it down and go. You don't have to touch anything. Leave it in auto, go do your thing. So the next topic is size and form factor. Now with this one, I really don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this. This thing is tiny, and in my opinion, one of the best features of this camera. For size, I'm giving it 9 out of 10. It can slide in your pocket. You literally don't know it's there. I mean, it's smaller than the smallest iPhone or whatever phone you choose to use. It's smaller, okay? But it's still a dedicated camera, which to me is part of this whole experience. Having an actual camera, not doing everything on your phone. Some people like to, and that's great. Some people want to have that separation, and this is a great tool for that because it's so small. It's not like, well, I've got my phone, so I don't want to lug around another camera. There is no lugging with this thing. It literally slides in your pocket and you forget it's there. So the only reason I gave it a 9 instead of a 10 is that it's so small. If you're somebody that has giant hands, it may actually feel kind of cumbersome to you. For me, I have, I guess, very average hands. I don't know, but it doesn't feel weird. I don't have a hard time holding on to it. I don't feel like I'm going to drop it or that kind of thing. I would put a little lanyard on it. I've just been lazy, but that's the only reason I would give it a 9 instead of a 10 is that if you are someone with larger hands, it may just feel unstable in your hands. So that's really the only knock I could think on size. 9 out of 10. All right, so my last category is fun factor. All right, I don't care what kind of camera it is. Maybe outside of like professional, very, very strict work, you should be having fun. That's what photography should be. So for me, fun factor absolutely had to be something that I talk about. For this camera, I give it a 10 out of 10. It is so much fun to use. It's so small. It's so convenient. This may sound weird, but this tiny, almost 20-year-old, quote unquote, low quality, depending on who you ask, camera has actually inspired me to go take more photos. It makes me take photos that I normally wouldn't if I was carrying around, a full kit or something like that. I always have it in my pocket, and I actually have to remember that it's there and go, oh yeah, I actually can take a picture of that because I've got this. So for that, I mean, if it gets you shooting more, how can that not be a good thing? It's actually made me more confident to take more shots, which then relates over to when I am going around with my kit, I'm going to be more inclined to take those as well. Okay, it's very techy and gadgety looking. If I would have had this thing as a kid, I would have thought this was like the world's coolest spy cam or something like that, because kids in the 80s, like that's what we thought was cool, right? I love the sliding cover. This little mechanism right here is just so cool to me. And again, that's me being a nerd, so maybe you don't care about that, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I love having it with me. I'm actually having to make myself shelf this one so I can move on to other cameras, but I'll probably still have it with me no matter what. So 10 out of 10 for fun. If you get your hands on one of these, you're gonna enjoy it. All right, with that said, those are all the categories that I'm going to be talking about with my reviews or my discussions. So that brought us to a total score of 43 out of 50, according to my point system. Guys, I think you would enjoy this camera. Now, I was skeptical, like I said, when I saw it in social media and stuff, I was like, oh, that looks really cool. But I go on eBay, and they are anywhere from about $50 to $100 on eBay, depending on what kind of condition they're in. DIGICAMs are hot right now, so everything is up. Looking back though, now that I know what I know about the camera, I would have no problem, in all honesty, spending the 50 to maybe 75-ish on a really clean copy. 100's kind of pushing it for me, but I'm just kind of cheap, if I'm being honest. So I just am really careful about what I spend money on. 50 bucks all day long. I was really fortunate and actually found this by accident. I had went to a used electronics store to pick up a couple of vintage lenses for my Fujifilm, and I happened to see it sitting on the shelf along with some others, and made a really, really good deal with the guy because he really wasn't into the camera end of things. So I got mine for cheap, but I would spend the $50 on it. I think it's a great little camera. It's a lot of fun. It's going to make you more confident in your shooting, I think, just having something always on you. And like I said, if you're one of those people that's like, man, I feel like I'm always on my phone, get something like this, because now you can take really cool pictures and not have to do it on your phone. And they have a whole line of them. This is just one of them. They kept going with this for a while, so this is just this particular one. So if you've stuck around for this long, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm having a lot of fun playing with a lot of my old cameras and also looking for new ones, and talking about them is something that I've always kind of wanted to do. I have a lot, so there's going to be more, and there's a lot of things I want to talk about regarding photography. I hope you guys dig it. If you do, show some love if you want. If you don't want, that's cool too, but I appreciate you guys being here, and we'll see you next time. Get out there, use your cameras. I almost forgot to do a shameless plug. If you're on Instagram, I am on there. My Instagram, my personal is AZ Jiu-Jitsu. There is a channel for the show. That's just Camera Club Diaries, all one word. Guys, the photography community on Instagram is actually really, really cool. There is a huge community and so many good people on there. So I do have a hashtag going, Camera Club Diaries. That is nothing to promote this page necessarily, but if you use that, I want to find you on there and I want to check out your work. So I think one thing we really need to do is have a sense of community at all times and lift each other up and build each other up, because if you're anything like me as a photographer, you're probably very self-critical, and you're putting your work out there, you're putting your creations out there, and you don't know how people are going to read that. And for some of us, that's tough, So my goal with this whole project and with the hashtag is let's find each other and then let's support each other. So if you're on Instagram, Camera Club Diaries, you'll see a link to my personal on there. You'll see a link to this YouTube, and you'll see the hashtag. Check me out on there so I can look you up. Thanks.